We're on page 64. We started last class the whole discussion of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. We started by saying that revenge and bearing a grudge was the prerequisite to overcoming those two attributes in order to get to V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, because they're mentioned in the same verse. All of these commandments are mentioned in Parashat Kedoshim, in the book of Vayikra, in Leviticus. Right, the chapter of holiness, there's got to be some connection there as well. Okay? What we're going to do today is what the benefits are. Are there limits to this mitzvah? Is it a positive? Is it a negative? And can you hate someone? Good question, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, right? We just like.
Thanks. Can you have a hit list?
Can you have right? Yes, well put. Can you have a hit list? Okay, yeah. I'm not on your hit list, am I? Rachel, I just want to make sure.
No. It's
Great,
very short.
very short, and as long as the rabbi and no one else I know is on it,
Yeah.
or anybody else actually. I'm only kidding.
It's the British.
Page 64. Leo's ready to go. Page 64, let's look at the Sefer Chinuch. The Sefer Chinuch, we said, was written to find reasons for mitzvah. So what's the reason for this mitzvah? What's the purpose of it? Let's look inside. And just by the way, the Torah said V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and then when Hillel gave it over, he said, what other people don't like, don't do. It's done in the reverse. Did anyone pick up on that? I don't think we mentioned that last class.
Yeah.
We didn't mention that last class? I feel good. I feel vindicated. Thank
No, I don't
goodness.
think you explained why.
I didn't explain why, that's right. I didn't explain why, because I forgot why. But then the answer is going to be in today's class. So let's go through this. And I believe this is all going to be in your midterm, which is coming up very soon. Oh, you look so excited, all of you. Oh, that's so nice.
Is it going to be like the first semesters?
Yeah, complete nightmare. Okay, the rabbi said, which you don't like being done to you, don't do to other people. That was the definition of you should love other people like you love yourself. Okay, it seems to be a flip, but let's try to see why. So the Sefer Chinuch, bottom of page 64, quotes the Sifri, Amar Rabbi Akiva, Zek Klal Gadol b'Torah. This is a great and important principle in the Torah. We looked at about 3 answers to why he called it a Klal Gadol. Klomar, as if to say, this is the Sefer Chinuch now, he's jumping in, and he's going to say, Shahar ben mitzvah shebetorah tloim b'kach. Many mitzvahs in the Torah are dependent upon this concept. She'ohev chaveru kenafsho. If you love another person like you love yourself, lo yignav meni, you're not going to steal from them. And by the way, stealing, as a side point, can mean things. But what else can it mean? Emily Okin. What else can stealing mean? What else can you steal?
You didn't kidnap a person.
Kidnapping is definitely, that's a form of stealing, yeah. That's really bad. What else can you steal? Which is actually considered worse than stealing things.
You didn't steal a life.
That's killing, that's definitely worse. Killing someone, yeah. Identity, yeah. All of you remember last semester, this is good. But what else can you steal that's problematic?
Intellectual property?
Intellectual property. You guys are very sophisticated. Intellectual property, life. You think law class here at Stern? Yeah.
Like you could steal someone's sleep.
Steal someone's sleep, actually, right. Right. Geneva Shana, it's called. Stealing someone's sleep. That's really bad. You can't return sleep, yeah? You can return things, you can't return sleep. Right? So that means when you're in the dorm sharing with someone, which I did for many years, right? And someone's sleeping, and you're like, yeah, good morning. Curtains open, music comes on, right? You're moving stuff around, you know, lights go on, off, right? And there's like loud noise and stuff, and everything's bumping around. And that person wakes up because they have a slightly later class than you, or maybe they're not feeling so well, or they want to sleep in a little bit. That's considered Geneva. That is considered stealing as well. Yeah? Say about reputation, it's also problematic, yeah? What else? There's one big one. Which
Stealing
really,
someone's wife?
stealing someone's wife is also a problem. We can see that in a second, yes? That's also a problem, yes?
You say it's not physical.
Right. That's also good stealing.
Oh.
Yes.
Stealing a mitzvah?
It's very good. Everyone's on form today. Look at that. For a sleepy, miserable bunch, all did very good today. Yeah, stealing a mitzvah, the opportunity to do a mitzvah. Someone wants to do a mitzvah, and you take the opportunity away from them, right? That's. I didn't think of that. I like that one. You know, that's a good midterm question. Give 5 definitions of what the Torah means when you shouldn't steal. Oh, I like that. That'll get you thinking. Yeah, write it down. That's Emily. Very smart. Yes. I like
All these
that, yeah.
answers good.
All these answers are great answers. They're all mentioned Chazal. They're all mentioned Chazal. Yeah. There's actually a big one, which is pretty obvious, but stealing someone's time. That's a precious gift. You can't return time. It's a very precious gift, time. Zman is very, very precious. You take someone's time by draining them of their time, misusing their time. You're not involved in this, but I'm involved in this well, so it's in my head, so I'll say it anyway. But dating someone for too long, right? You see the world today, people date for like 1, 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You're stealing someone's time.
You still consider it stealing if it's not like intentional?
Even if it's not intentional, yeah. In other words, you have to, because it's always intentional. In other words, you have to make intentional. You have to think, well, I'm responsible for this person. Like, oh, we're just having a good time. But there's an intention. It may not be malicious. It's still stealing. You may not be there to hurt someone with it.
But then isn't everything stealing? Like,
I don't think everything's stealing.
Like everyone, like at some point, like let's say you say stealing time, like everyone does that.
Yeah. Everyone does. Everyone speaks lashon hara. It doesn't mean it's right. It just means it has purpose. I mean, we're all doing it. You know, we're all wasting people's times. And you know, there's a certain rabbi I deal with, and I get on the phone with him, and literally, you cannot have a conversation for less than 30 minutes until he builds up to his point. He's not stealing. He's not. He's a very nice guy. He's actually trying to help me. He wants me to go speak at this organization, and he just goes on and on and on. And I spoke to him. I said, "Listen, help me out. If someone who works with him." And he says, "You literally got to say to him, I have 20 minutes. And you've got to literally just put it down." And he's a very nice guy. He's not doing it maliciously, but at some point, I'm like, you know, or the people leave like long messages on your phone. "Hi, Rabbi. How are you? I was just thinking about you because I had orange juice for breakfast. And last time I saw you, I was drinking orange juice. And one second, I call waiting. I'm back." Anyway, I'm like, oh my God. You know, like, really. I mean, there's a certain amount of sensitivity, of awareness that we're expected to have. So you're right, we're all doing it the whole time, right? And it may not be the worst things in most cases, but sometimes it is. Being a person is time. Right? You have to at least become sensitive to it. You know? So lo yignov mimenu, v'lo yinaf et ishto, and don't have affairs with someone else's. V'lo yirub mamon, and don't take benefit, defraud them of their money. V'lo devarim v'lo yisig vulo, don't damage their property, don't take advantage of their property. V'lo yizik lo b'shum tzad, don't harm them in any way. That's how you're meant to think about another person. Don't harm them in any way. Right? Before you get to like make sure I'm loving them, try not to harm other people. So one of my rabbis said, one of his rabbis told him, if someone's going to Jewish education, he says, just don't make it worse than it is. If you're working Jewish education, you don't make things better, just don't make it worse. That's already like, maybe that's why it's the negative first. Hey, don't make it worse, and then we'll talk about the positive. Right? That's the safer chana.
Maybe since it's obviously easier, so it's easier for everyone to kind of follow, like
Right? Not to mess up.
Like not to do anything rather than to actually like go beyond and like actually
Start doing something good for other people. Yeah, okay, I'm like that. And many other mitzvot. Now, all these mitzvot I mentioned in the Torah, well, some of them are. I actually know, no stealing and all these other mentions of the Torah. The Torah only gives you headlines. You've got to figure out the rest with your own common sense. Right? As someone said, the common sense ain't so common. You do a develop called Ben Das. And he says, everyone knows this. This is common sense. That's the Torah way of saying this is common sense. You're meant to have common sense. Be nice to people and don't hurt them. Now, we're leaving aside all the Chil Hashem issues that go with hurting other people, right? As an observant Jew or a Jew in general, and how other people see you. All right, so that's considered one of the worst things. So there's a great, I love this piece. This is one of my favorite pieces of Torah, I think. There's a book called the Sefer Mitzvah HaGadol, the Smug he's referred to. And he says like this. He wants to explain how you're going to do this, how you're going to fulfill this. So he says, imagine, I think I mentioned this before, but we see inside out. He says, imagine a person, don't do to others what you don't want to done to yourself, is cutting a piece of meat, okay? And while they're cutting the meat, they cut their own hand. And then you see them hit the other hand that cut the other hand. Or they're walking along and they trip up with their right foot and they kick their right foot with their left foot. Lara, what would you think about such a person that did this? You saw a person do this. Masochist, right? I think the general word is mashugana, right? That's how we generally refer to these things. But why? They just got hurt. They just hurt. So they want to, take revenge, get back at them. Why is that so crazy? If someone else did it and hit them, then kind of makes sense, but why hate themselves is so crazy?
Because they're a team that's supposed to work together.
Because they're one person, right? They're one person. There's one to right and left. We're part of the same body. It makes no sense. Why would you hurt yourself? So he wants to say that actually you're meant to see everyone else the same way. Me shouting, upsetting, talking lashon hara about anybody else, anything else than bein adam l'chavero, I'm actually hurting myself. If you really see the entire Jewish people as ish echad b'lev echad, one person with one soul, as we were referred to at Mount Sinai, then I can't offend Caleb because I'm actually offending myself. I will offend her because I'm obviously seeing her as a different entity. But no, we're actually one. If I see us as one people, one ish echad b'lev echad, then the chance of me upsetting or, heaven forbid, hitting her, it's actually like me hitting myself. Imagine that. I should put that in my new book when it comes to marriage. Right? Because in marriage you get into a lot of arguments and fights. You get very irritated. I'm just telling you.
No,
Starts off okay. Under the chuppah, everyone's okay, everyone's smiling and happy. You know?
My parents are married, I know.
But they're still married.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Not a bad thing. And you know what? Emily, Diana, could be something to that as well, but that's between you and your therapist. However, if you have that kind of thing about how can I upset another person, and it's tough to do this, but that's really the goal. That, I believe, is the secret to all life. That one little bit of Torah we just read, we didn't even do it in the Hebrew, we did it in the English. Right? He actually says it's actually from the Yerushalmi. Garsida mishiyoshev m'chatek basar, a person's cutting meat, v'haki yado b'sakin, ki tachzu yado v'takelo b'hin, and he takes revenge against his own hand because he cut him. It's madness. Right? It's complete madness. Yeah. He says this is a metaphor, perfect metaphor, right? Because we see each other's together. Okay? But then he says, however, some people do certain things and hatred becomes understandable. Okay, so hold on to that one thought. Before we do that, let's look at one other piece, the Maharsha, and he's going to comment on something as well. And he wants to say, what did Hillel say in the negative, not the positives? He's going to give his answer. And he says, V'yesh lomar mashmalei, the karale iri ella b'chihai gavna. It's mentioned in this negative form. You understand the question? Torah says, love other people like you love yourself. And he says, that means if someone hates something, don't do that to them. Okay? Why is it on the negative? And he says, he says, because it's impossible to love someone like you love yourself. To give that much love to someone else that you have, that's like, you have to aspire, but it's really, really tough. It's like really, really difficult to do. However, when it comes to this, don't hurt someone, that's at least the least you could do. So that's a lower level. So at least it's a starting point. All right? You're entitled to I mean, how much love can you give? Right? I love myself all the time. I'm constantly worrying about myself. I'm going to constantly do that. So that's really tough. So it says, at least don't do the negative. And he actually calls it a negative mitzvah. Mrs. Lo Saseh. He includes this. Loving other people like you love yourself is a mitzvah saseh. But there's also lo saseh. A lot saseh. That which is not to hate other people. Right? And not to, don't do what you don't like, don't do to them. Okay? So it's mentioned as a negative. Okay? Okay, go to the bottom of page 66. Turn over the page if you don't mind. I'll just skip that last part because we've kind of mentioned it already. Okay, so what is the as yourself bit? Kamocha. If you love others like you love yourself. What's the kamocha part? As yourself. So the Rambam, let's look at the Ibn Ezra first of all. He says, according to my opinion, v'aldati shur kamashmo. It's literal. That means if you love something, you should try to do it for other people. When, where, how, that's open to discussion. But he says it's literal. The Rambam, I don't think he's disagreeing, but in the laws of conduct, in Hilchot Deot, he says, Mitzvah kol adam lahavet kol echad mechad v'Yisrael kegufa. You have to have every other Jewish person like you love yourself. Your own body. Shnei mar v'haverecha kamocha. Lefikach sarich. Now he adds to this. She saper b'shivcha. You should say nice things about them. Always praise other people. This is a positive. He doesn't say don't speak lashon hara, which he mentions elsewhere. He's like, say nice things about people. V'lochos al mamano, and have mercy upon their money. Like just like you don't want to lose money. If you lost $5, you'd be really, really upset. Yeah, lost $10, $50, $100, right? So why are you okay with someone else losing 5, 10, 15, 25, $25? Right? You want to be honored. You want people to honor you, to look at you and say, "Oh, Leo's a nice girl. She's so sweet. She's so lovely. You know, she's a very honorable person." So then Leo should be like, "Well, you know what? I want other people to feel that as well." So much so when he mentions this in his law book, if you have honor by putting other people down, by embarrassing other people, and by denigrating them, and he quotes the Gemara we looked at last class, "Ein lo chedek lo haba," you don't go to the next world. Right? It's like considered one of the worst things, embarrassing, shaming other people. Right? It's one of the worst things you can do to another person. Okay? It's seen as a terrible, terrible thing. Yeah. Okay, but can you ever hate? That's the question we have to look at. Is it ever possible to hate someone? So, some commentators are going to say, yeah, if people act really badly, you can hate them. Right? And you can talk about them, and you can make them pariahs. You can push them away. Some others say, you're not really hating the person. All people are good. What you're hating is what they do. See, there's a slight difference over there. Some say, no, people act really badly, consistently, right? I just hate them, I have to. And then, whether you can talk about that person, share that information, that's something else. But we're talking about what you put inside your heart. Now, the Torah says you shouldn't hate someone in your heart, right? Don't. However, there's times when, you know what? They act so bad that I have to treat them as though I hate them. That seems to be the... Hey, phones away, please. Right? So they have to get to a point where we are like, but maybe I don't hate the person. Right? I don't hate whoever it is, Shoshana. So Shoshana did something to me that's like really bad. Okay, and I hate what she did to me. Now I gotta do something about that. So my hatred goes towards what she did, but not towards her. It's just she happened to have done it. So that's where the hatred is going towards. But it's not actually her I'm hating. That's kind of like the kind of like dispute over here. Okay? And we're going to throw in as well, you can't judge other people, right? And nowadays, everyone's doing something that's wrong. So it's very hard for us to do it. However, it's still discussed. And it says in Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, chapter 139, Halo misanecha Hashem esneh, ovid komecha et kotat, which means I shall not hate those that hate you, God, and I shall not, shall I not hate those that hate you, and shall I not actually hate against you who deny your providence? Well, if someone acts against Hashem, I should hate that. That should get me upset and angry. Yeah, page 67. So the Gemara is trying to figure out who this is referring to. Who is this person you can hate? Right? So it starts by saying that the Gemara says in Pesachim, Amar Rab Shmuel bar Yitzchak Amar Rav, Mutar l'sonah, there's certain people that you're allowed to hate. Why? Because the Torah says, Ki tirach hamosanecha ravas tachat maso. If you see a person you hate loading their donkey, that's one of the mitzvahs of the Torah. What are you meant to do? What's the mitzvah in that scenario? If you see one of the people you hate loading a donkey, what should you do? You shall surely go and help them when it comes to putting the stuff on the donkey. Okay? So you see your friend's donkey, right, or car, or whatever they're going through, or they're shopping, whatever you want to, learn it out to it. You see them struggling, right? You should do something about it. So, well, one second. So we see over here that there is someone you're hating over here, right? Because that's the person. Obviously, a friend you would help, but the Torah's having to tell you that if you hate someone, you have to go and actually. So who is it? Are you getting the question? We're trying to figure out, is hatred okay, not okay? We're like, well, actually, there's a pasuk in the Torah where it talks about a person who you don't like, and you have to go and help them if you see them in trouble. It's like, well, why doesn't there just say just don't hate them? So it says, first of all, right, who is this enemy, this person, right, struggling? And lest you think the word enemy refers to a non-Jew, right, it actually says, no, we're even referring to a Jewish person. So the hatred is actually for a person who is part of the Jewish people. But it says, one second, but you're not allowed to hate other people. Vakativ, it says in Vayikra Leviticus Yutet 19. Lo tisneh et achicha bilvavecha. You cannot hate your brother, referring to your community, your people, in your heart. Right? Ella tiikes sahadi da avidisura. Rather, rather, thus we're speaking about someone whom you alone saw do a terrible thing, and actually, you're like, wow, I cannot do. They did that. I hate them for doing that terrible thing they did. Even so, such a person. So there is such a person, says the Gemara. But even so, there are situations when even such a person, you should help out. Maybe the help is you should help them get help. You know.
I don't get it. I'm so confused. Is it saying that you're allowed to hate someone you see doing an immoral act?
So at the Gemara's conclusion was, yeah. The Gemara conclusion is, the Gemara was trying to figure out, like, well, who is this person of hatred that you can hate? And it says, well, who's it referring to? It says, first it's referring to a Jewish person, right? So it's someone from some of your community. And they were saying, but we can see that the hatred does exist because we know in the Torah, it says, if you see a person you hate struggling, you should try to help them. So we're obviously referring to someone who you do hate. So Torah accepts that. And Torah says, well, who is this person then? We try to identify, like, person X. You're allowed to hate, the one that you still have to help out. And the Gemara says, there's some people who act such bad way that, yeah, there's such people out there who you can hate. Now, whether it's them or their actions, but they're still doing the actions themselves. Right? You may be required to help them still at the same time.
So what do you define as immoral? Like, meaning anyone can then be like,
that's a trivial question. We're going to come to that. It's very, very difficult to define. So difficult actually that we're kind of like, they've got to be completely out. It's got to be like totally accepted. Yeah.
Does the Torah give justification as to why you should help them? Like, what benefit do you have for helping them?
It does over there. And the benefit that comes from it is, first of all, you still have to become merciful. There's still an element of mercy, rachmanut, that we have to keep. Right? One of the traits of the Jewish people is we have to be merciful. And we are, no matter what anyone tells you out there, whether we act here or act in Israel, we are extremely merciful people. Right? Actually, one of the traits that actually defines someone is actually Jewish, is they have rachmanut. See someone who's like really nasty, like constantly, there's a question whether they're actually even part of our people. Right? They're so bad, it's like it could even come into question. Right? Maybe they're not who we think they are. So it's sometimes lesser about them as it is about you. And actually, a lot of these mitzvahs are that way. We always think, well, we should be merciful on that person. Actually, they don't deserve my mercy, but I still have to act with mercy because I need to be merciful. It's interesting, right? You think of it, right? Well, you should be nice to them, right? Turn the other cheek. No, they're a terrible person. They should be told about it. But I still need to keep myself in a case of mercifulness. That's how they seem to come with it. Okay? So if someone really transgresses, however, they're constantly bad, they're always doing it, and they know better. They know better. Okay? And in such a situation, commentators say that you're entitled to hate them. So let's jump forward now to the Shulchan Aruch. Turn over the page, page 68. Turn over the page. And the Shulchan Aruch says, yeah, but. Maybe that was true a long time ago, but now we've reached a point in our history where, no one has the right to start judging other people, and even hatred itself. Okay? So he says, this person's going to be really bad. Hasona Torah. Who is this Sona, this hated person the Torah refers to? Right? We said it's a person, a Jewish person. But he says, you're not allowed to hate another Jew. We said that. So he says, Kagon, Sheroa Lavado Sha'avada Veira. This person is constantly committing a sin, and people have tried to fix this person, and they continue to do it. He says it's a mitzvah. This person's constantly bad, and they're always doing bad, and you're like, this person's just a bad, I hate him, I'm going to keep him out of my life. That's what the Torah says you have to go and help them. They see them like struggling under their donkey. Right? That's what the Torah is talking about. That's the person you have to help. That's what he says. He says, sorry, 1 second. The Torah is makpid, takes concern about the souls of people. Ben Rishayim ben Tzadikim, whether bad people or good people. Yeah? You know that even after we left Egypt, and the Egyptians came to attack us, and they entered the ocean, the Red Sea to come and kill us, and they got killed out, the Jewish people were not allowed to start celebrating. They couldn't openly celebrate. They were happy and grateful, but they couldn't openly celebrate that the Egyptians came to attack us. It's like, you know what? You are guests. These are still humans. They're still made in the image of God. You can't overdo it. Right? You see other cultures, when their enemies get defeated, they start, and they're so happy about it. That's not the Jewish way. We don't do that. You're grateful that you survived, but you can't start celebrating another person's downfall. Right? Handing out candy or something. It's just not the Jewish way. We're grateful to Hashem. But we don't flaunt our success and their downfall. Okay? Same with people. Even bad people. Yeah.
Didn't Miriam bring a tambourine or something?
We were grateful to Hashem and we sang thanks to God. But we didn't stand. We did at the beginning. We were first, and Hashem said, "Be quiet." We were celebrating the death. We told the devil, "Oh!" It's like, no, there's dead people in front of you. Don't celebrate when your enemy is down. Don't celebrate, because eventually that person's going to come. And you're going to go down. But yes, we're grateful, and we sang to him. We said, "Az Yashir." Right? We're grateful to Hashem for it. We don't gloat over it. There's a difference, yeah. Okay. Sometimes you can love someone and hate them at the same time. That's what the Balatanya says. Some people, right, you hate what they do, but you have to try to bring them close. So you push them away with one hand. It's a famous analogy. You push them away with one hand, but you pull them closer with the other. Right? Some people you have to kind of push away, but you bring them close at the same time. That's a little bit different. That is like, that's your enemy, and you want to keep an eye on them. We're saying no. You want to actually try to bring them closer, whilst holding them back. Right? There's an aspect of that. Okay. So it's tricky nowadays. As we said in earlier classes, you can't judge another person at all. You don't know what they've been through. We live in a completely different world today, I believe. And these things are, even people who go through terrible things. You may have some person who's so bad and so constantly bad that such a person you can speak Lashon Hara about, you can protect other people from them, and you can hate what they did, and you can hate them as well for what they did. But they've got to be consistent. It has to be very, very evident. Most people are not like that. Just hating someone who cuts you in traffic or makes one bad comment towards you is not included in that category. We're talking about someone who's consistently evil, right? Which happens in the movies and in the news, but most people in life are not like that. I like to believe, anyway.
Can you be annoyed with people, and should you be annoyed with people? Because that annoyance can lead to
Great
hatred.
question. Great question. It's natural to be upset, annoyed with people. What you're expected to do, says the Rambam, is go up to them and tell them. I heard a good story on this. I read a good story. A story about Abraham Tversky, a psychiatrist, a prolific author. You heard of him before? Wow. Okay, it's worth getting some of his books. He's written tons of them. So he's a doctor, a psychiatrist, MD, and he's written a lot of books. So I've heard him speak many times. I've read his books. So he told I can't remember if I heard it, so I read it. He tells the following story. He was, I think I mentioned the story before. I don't think in this class. He was in Pittsburgh, and there was a convent about a couple of hours away, nunnery, and some of them needed therapeutic help, so they wanted to send them to him because he was a God-fearing person, to the rabbi. So they sent the nuns to him for treatment. So he says one day he made an appointment, and he forgot to put it in his diary, so he forgot this lady had an appointment, and he was out of the office, and she schlepped an hour and a half or 2 hours to see him, waited. This was pre-cell phones, so you couldn't even track someone down, and he had to schlep all the way back. She lost her entire day, and it was his fault. So he says, he called up, he apologized, and they made another appointment. She came, and he says, I want to start by apologize. And he's like, no, you don't need to apologize. He's like, no, but I stood you out. I did a terrible thing. I didn't put it down. I wasn't careful enough. She's like, you don't need to apologize. And he's like, but I feel like and he's like, you know what? I do need to apologize. It's okay for you to be upset with me and tell me you're upset and then to forgive me. That's actually, you can't just jump from, it's all okay. I did a terrible thing. It's like, yeah, I'm upset with you. That's a natural, healthy way to be. Then you can be like, please don't do it again. I apologize. And then you forgive me. And then we move on. That's a natural, healthy way to be. Right? I messed up. I understand that. And then we move on. Right? And maybe he says the reason you're having the other problems, you're having actually addiction issues, is because you haven't allowed that part of your personality to come out that I'm upset with you. Don't do that to me. And the Rambam says if someone upsets you, you should take them aside privately and say, why did you do that? This is halacha, by the way. And the Mishnah Torah says this. Why did you do this to me? Why did you say that to me in front of those people? I don't like, please don't do that again. It's uncomfortable, but it's a conversation you need to have. By doing that, you're removing the hatred from your heart. The person is able to know, do tshuva, repent, and say sorry, right? And then your relationship can carry on. Now, I find it's very difficult because I don't like to, stir the pot sometimes, but, please don't do that. And that's a mitzvah. So we're not saying you should oh, it's all okay, you hurt me, you took my stuff. Don't do that again. But I forgive you. You hear the difference?
Going off of that, what if it escalates and you tell the person you're annoyed and then the person says, why are you annoyed with me? I didn't do anything wrong. Then how should you handle the situation?
So these are conversations. There's no foolproof. Most people, the best form of defense is attack. Oh, I never did anything. You're like, I hear. I'm just telling you what happened. It's a sign of maturity, right? And by the way, this is very good with kids. If a parent just everything kids does is fine, he's like, don't do that. It's not okay. Say sorry to Imma, say sorry to Abba, say sorry to your sister, and say sorry to your brother, which is more likely, This is constantly that's the way people have to learn. Oh, forget about it. It's just a smack on the head. No, it's not okay. It's uncomfortable, and you stick at it. And that person should forgive you. You should be forgiving. The Rambam said you should be forgiving. If not the first time, if not the second time, at least the third time. After the third time, you've done your job, and it becomes their problem. It becomes their problem. You should be forgiving, just because you want to be forgiven as well. So the Torah doesn't deny these emotions exist, but you're expected in a healthy way to discuss and get them out and to move on. We live in a world, which I'm part of as well, where we don't upset anyone, don't mention it. I'm as guilty as anyone else. But that's not what the Torah expects you to do. The Torah expects you to remove the hate because the grudge stays inside you. Right? And eventually you're going to take revenge against them for what they did to you. It's going to happen. Right? Whatever you're going to do back to them. Right? So it all comes full circle. Yeah? Okay. So what's the aim of Ahavat Yisrael? What's this idea? What's the purpose of it? And we'll finish with this. So let's go back to the chinuch. Right? And he says the basis for this mitzvah, shorish mitzvah yadua, it's obvious. Basically, it's how society functions. Right? You want people to treat you nice, you do it to them as well. Society moves forward. Right? This is how to bring peace into the world. If everyone's bearing grudges, everyone's angry, everyone's taking revenge, then we're not going to have a peaceful society. So this is the real reason why we want a peaceful society. We want a peaceful community. We want peaceful families. We want to have shalom among us, right? Which is considered a very, very important thing. Right? So by having this mitzvah of ahavah, that's where it comes from. Okay. But there's a deeper answer to this. Right? It says the Smak, the Sefer Mitzvah Katan, right? He says, actually, and we mentioned this already, because people are made in the image of God. Right? He says, and that's to bring shalom bein adam lechavero, and to judge them favorably. We know that already. And Ben Azai, right, says, we were made in God's image. So if you love other people, you're actually loving God. If every human is made in the image of God, if you're able to love other people, ultimately, in some way, you're actually loving Hashem. Okay? And just because it doesn't affect you, right, Doesn't mean it doesn't affect them. You don't need to be honored, but some people do. Yeah? Because ultimately, this person is a bit of God. How bad, let's just finish this off and we'll take questions. How bad is hatred? How bad do we consider it? So, if you look through the Torah studies, look through the Torah and the various commentaries, it's considered one of the things that destroys the world. Literally destroys us as a people. That's why this is so much emphasis upon this mitzvah. We don't really talk, we talk about laws of Shabbat, we talk about tefillin, but actually this mitzvah needs to be spoken about because if you look at all the bad stuff that's happened to us, it came from this. Right? Let's have a look. The David HaMelech Katav, King David wrote, Bakesh Shalom v'Radfehu, pursue peace, seek peace and pursue it. Radfehu literally means to run after it. Why? V'da, the heaven ki ma'od gadol shalom. God, shalom is very, very important. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Bais Rishon lama nichrav. Why was the first temple destroyed? Because of 3 sins: idolatry, avodah zarah, licentiousness, gilui arayot, and shfichat damim, and murder. So the first temple was destroyed, right, by the Babylonians for a spiritual reason. We didn't deserve to have it, so God allowed the Babylonians to come and destroy it. And there were 3 reasons. 1, we were killing each other, physically and emotionally or in other ways. 2, we were involved in idol worship. And 3, we were involved in idolatry. So the first temple was destroyed. Okay. Why was the second temple destroyed then? Right. Right. When the members of that generation were great scholars and they were very great people, they were doing wonderful things. So why were the Romans allowed to destroy the second temple? What was the spiritual root to that destruction? So he says, because there was sinat chinam, very famous. There was baseless hatred among them. So 1 second. The first temple was destroyed because of those 3 terrible, terrible sins. The second temple doesn't mention that. It says because of baseless hatred. Right? Just hating a person for no good reason. So what do we learn out of that? A very important lesson. That hating another person is equal to those first 3. They equal one another. Hating another person and everything that comes out of it. Speaking Lashon Hara about them, that's going to come out of it. And wanting to upset them, take a revenge against them, and bear a grudge against them, and all the other bad stuff that comes out of it, is equal to the first 3. To murder, to forbidden sexual relationships, and to avodah zarah. Right? We consider that to be as bad, because it doesn't mention those other 3. Those 3 may not have existed at the time of the second temple, or enough to cause God's wrath. But in this case it did. So we consider this to be worse. So much so that each generation that doesn't rebuild the second temple and build the third one is considered as though they destroyed it. We're all responsible because we haven't allowed it to be rebuilt, which means that we are still doing this. Or we'd have the third temple by now. So you can't say, they were bad, I understand, it was their fault. But yeah, but every generation that doesn't rebuild, it's as though they destroyed. So that's problem 2. Yeah. That means we're part of the problem. Yeah, you hear? And we'll finish with some Kabbalah. Maybe this is the spiritual root to the whole problem. This is the Baal HaTanya, one of the fathers of Lubavitch Hasidism. And he says, 1 second. He says, a person recognizes the loftiness of a person's neshama, a person's soul. When you recognize how great a person's soul is, as contrasted to the lowly body that we have, right? The body is physical, the soul is purely spiritual, can easily fulfill the mitzvah of loving another Jew. If you appreciate the difference between your body and your soul, where your soul comes from, how elevated it is, and what your body is and how low it is, this mitzvah should become very, very simple. Because all Jews are interconnected and all are children of one Father, one God. If you look at it that way, suddenly the whole thing changes. And therefore we're called achim, we're called brothers. That's not physical brothers, but we're called like a community. He says every person's neshama has its shorish, its root within God. And we all have a little bit of God inside us, every human. and one is only divided from the other in the physical sense. And we have separate things that separate us, but that's just physical. Our bodies are separate, right? Our bodies, our possessions are separate, but really, our souls are connected. We don't see it. We sometimes feel it, but we don't see it. But it doesn't mean it's not true. On the other hand, a person who gives presence to their physical side, if you forget your soul, and everything's physical, and everything you pursue is physical, and the whole life is physical, and that's what you pursue, that's your entire being, then it makes sense. It makes sense that you're going to not be nice to another person because they're not me, and I'm not them, and we're separate and distinct. And it's going to be difficult for them to fulfill this mitzvah, he says. See, that's why Hillel describes this mitzvah as the most fundamental commandment in the Torah, and the rest is commentary, because the foundation of service Hashem is to elevate one's soul to its root and thereby draw upon spiritual sustenance for this Jewish people, which is not possible if we're divided. In other words, this whole thing is only going to make sense. All this is if you accept that we are spiritual beings, we have a spiritual purpose, and the Spirit comes from God. Which doesn't sound very Jewish, but it is. If you accept that, then everything else falls away. That's the root to this whole thing. Simple. That's the way he sees it. Well, simple to understand, difficult to act upon. If you constantly see another person as like, I'm dealing with a spiritual being here, not just the physical just getting in the way. But there's something deeper over here. Now, you don't do that when you talk to a cow, right? You go to the farm or the zoo, you don't look out like, oh yeah, there's something deep inside there. I've got to talk nicely, you know? It's not the same if you can't abuse cows, but that's not the point. The point is that you accept the fact that it is what it is, and there's not too much there. But a human has a divine soul, which a cow does not have. Right? A goat does not have. You don't relate to those animals like you relate to humans. You shouldn't relate the way you relate to humans. Okay? Why? Because a human... I'm talking to you right now. Let's just clear this up. So right now, a physical process is happening. There is wind coming out of my mouth, right, for some of you hot air, and it's bouncing against my vocal cords, and the vibrations coming out and going against your eardrum. It's a physical process that's happening, purely physical. And you can't see parts of it, but we know it is. Right? The bouncing of my vocals against your eardrum, that's really what's happening. Now, I can have the same conversation with a cow. I talk to Daisy, and the same thing, the cow may hear me, probably, somewhere, and I'm talking to it, but that's two lumps of meat, right? Talking to each other, well, one person talking to the other one, through vibrations. But when I talk to you, I know that it's not just like a piece of meat talking to another piece of meat. I'm actually talking to your soul. That's really what I'm doing. Right? The physical mechanism is just a clothing about a real spiritual conversation that's happening between us. Which is why speech is considered, we said last semester if you remember, a very spiritual act. And we're going to talk about it at the end of this semester, which is why Lashon Hara is considered so terrible. So when you have a conversation with someone, you're not talking to their body, you're talking through their body, but you're actually talking to the neshama. And the neshama is from God. So actually having a conversation with God, to some degree. Or a piece of God, as it were. Does that make sense? Are we clear? That's all I have to say today. Thoughts, comments, echoes? Sinat chinam. Sinat chinam. Baseless hatred. That's what destroyed the Second Temple. Very famous expression. And the answer is not Ahavat chinam, free love, right? Baseless love, but Ahavat Yisrael. Okay. Yes.
How was the generation who destroyed the Second Temple expressing their baseless hatred? Was it just
great question? How they were doing it by taking revenge against each other and by speaking the Chavetz Chaim by speaking Lashon Hara. That's how it came out. And he's going to learn out that Lashon Hara is equal to those three. Actually, the Gemara is going to say it. We'll see. So Lashon Hara was one of the worst things they did at that time. They say, right? Evil speech, destructive speech, was how it manifested itself. And how it does for most people. Most people are not smacking people in the head. They're just not. So that's how it manifested itself. Well, we're going to come to that. We're going to spend a number of classes on that.
Explain again the donkey.
So the donkey concept was, if you see a person an enemy of yours, you have an enemy who is trying to load their donkey and they're struggling, you should go and help them. So we just use that as a, first of all, that in and of itself, that's the lesson. Even if someone you don't like doesn't mean you can't help them. Try to overcome it to help them. You see they're in need. But the Gemara just used that as a proof that some people could actually still be your enemy. So who is this person? We're trying to figure out who's this enemy. You're not allowed to hate another person. So we're saying some people act so bad that they deserve that title. And even so, you have to help them.